Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 515 of the Juicebox Podcast. In the 1987 NBA draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers chose Chris Dudley. He went on to play 16 seasons for a handful of teams and even made it to the NBA Finals once. He also has type 1 diabetes, and he runs a camp for kids with type 1 called the Chris Dudley Foundation. You can learn more about it at chrisdudley.org. Today, Chris and I are going to talk about a ton of stuff: playing in the NBA, being diagnosed with type 1, playing in the NBA with type 1, what it was like to face Michael Jordan, his camp, and all of the other stuff that popped into my head while we were chatting. While you're listening to the show today, I'd love it if you could remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. The podcast is also sponsored by the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. I want you to go to dexcom.com/juicebox right now, where you can learn more about the Dexcom G6 and even get started. It'll be the best decision that you've ever made.
My name is Chris Dudley. From a diabetes perspective, I got diabetes in 1981 when I was 16 years old. Played in the NBA for 16 years, and we started the foundation in the Chris Dudley Foundation for Kids with Diabetes in 1994. I've had 25 years of basketball camp for kids with type 1 diabetes. I get kids from all over the country. All over the world, really. We've had kids from, globally, and ages 10 through 16, boys and girls, and we've also done a lot of other outreach for diabetes as well.
Can you think back to when you developed the basketball camp originally? What made you do it?
Yeah, So backing up, 1981, and really dating myself here, but that's all right. Obviously diabetes was in a different spot. It was tough. And when you got diagnosed with diabetes, it was I tell the story that the first thing I asked the doctor is, am I going to live? And by that, I didn't mean next week or whatever, but how long? What does this mean? Because at that time, it meant a shortened lifespan. So it was, it just rocked my world. And then it was, of course, would I still be able to play basketball? And I got the affirmative on both, which wasn't always the case back then. Sometimes they discouraged athletics activity because of the risk of getting low blood sugars. And so fortunately that was changing. That's when studies were coming out and saying activity was good for your overall health, your blood control. Seems obvious now, but at the time it was a concern. And so anyway, fast forwarding, go through high school, go through college, make it into the league. I was the first and only player to play at that time in the NBA with type 1 diabetes. And you almost didn't want to let anybody know. I did, but I really wanted to establish myself as an NBA player and have diabetes kind of be an afterthought versus should we sign this guy because we don't know if he can make it.
Right.
Once I had proved that, and more people became aware that I had in the diabetes community that I had diabetes, get a lot of letters from kids or parents. How do you do it?
Mm-hmm.
What's your game day routine? What do you eat? What kind of insulin? How do you play an activity with having while having diabetes? And so I'd always been asked about and most pro players are, about doing a basketball camp, getting involved with camp. And so my wife and I came up with the idea, let's combine them and let's have a camp for kids with diabetes. And so the long-winded answer is that it was really, the genesis was really the outreach from kids and parents asking, and just realizing what a need there was for it.
Right. Wait, at that time, so you're diagnosed in high school. I imagine you're playing in high school. You go to college and play. Are you just like using regular and MPH? Are you just kind of shooting insulin in the morning and in the evening and kind of eating on a schedule?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I think I started off doing that. And then at some point, pretty soon after, I went to the multi-shot a day,
okay,
where you're taking a shot before every meal.
And they call it, now you're getting basal insulin and mealtime insulin.
Yes.
They call it. Did you test very frequently?
I did.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes more than others, but with playing sports, I felt like I had to.
Right.
And, on game days, I would test as many as 16 times on a game day, just to really have it dialed in.
Right. And so did you, looking back, I'm assuming now you manage differently. You have a pump, or are you still MDI?
I do. So now I have the Omnipod.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the pump, and then I have Dexcom.
So now you have a real vision into what's happening. Like, looking back, were you playing at an elevated blood sugar, or do you not even know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I definitely was, because, if you're playing, practice is one thing, but a game's another. If you're playing in front of 20,000 people, you're more worried about going low than you are going high.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I definitely do. And looking back, I would have loved to have had a Dexcom or something. I mean, I'd love pump too, but just to know what my blood sugar was doing would have been invaluable.
Yeah, no kidding. So I asked my son, I was like, what should I ask Chris when I talked to him? And he was just like, well, you have to ask him what it's like to play against Michael Jordan at some point. And I was like, okay, I'll see if he wants to talk about that. But
yeah, happy to.
Yeah, no kidding. But staying into the diabetes for a second longer, if you're elevated, like, do you think you were at a deficit?
Yes.
No kidding.
I do. I think, I took a lot of pride in, I never wanted to miss a game because of diabetes.
Right.
I really never wanted diabetes to be an issue. And I felt like, right or wrong, I felt like almost an obligation for those in the community to show, diabetes isn't going to prevent me from playing, and show that you can play in the NBA. And I felt like I established that early in my career, where I had a couple of years where I think I played all 82 games, and if I missed a game, I never missed a game because of diabetes. But in doing so, I also know that there was times that I was either low, borderline lows, or certainly it may be higher blood sugar. And there were plenty of times, I joke around with the kids that I never missed a game, but there were plenty of games where I was running up and down the court, having drank 3 cans of apple juice or something to get my blood sugar up.
Right.
So it wasn't always easy. And I think it would have been a lot easier or better today to kind of be a little bit tighter control,
right,
with all the technology, and not to mention the speed of insulin increased in the 90s, right. And it keeps improving. But there was a rapid when we went from from regular to Humalog or whatever. That made a big difference. Everything. Yeah, it really helped.
Did the coaches and players know? I mean, and by know, I mean, did you play with some people who flat out didn't know you had diabetes, and did you play with people who knew but didn't pay any attention to it?
Well, everybody would have known, I think, but there might have been some who, just didn't pay attention,
right, or wouldn't even understand. I would imagine too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm testing my blood sugar in the locker room before we're going out, and so it wasn't like so they would know. The person who had to really know and be dialed in was the trainer, of course. And with the coaches, they knew, but I really didn't want them to have to
think about it.
Yeah, that wasn't that was on me and the trainer to be ready when your number's called.
And the fear there is that if they feel like there's a weakness, then there's a reason to put somebody else out there instead of you, whether it's diabetes or anything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot of pressure. How did you do that for 16 years?
Well, yeah, you just get in a routine. I mean, it just becomes your, your kind of your way of life.
Yeah.
And I think with the coaches, and let me differentiate in case we have any younger listeners or players, is that number one, in the NBA, you have a full training staff. And so having that relationship with the trainer takes that pressure off. If you're in high school or younger or club basketball or whatever, your coach has to know and be very, very aware of it.
Right.
Because there is no trainer, there's no intermediary.
Yeah. It's you and your parents. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, exactly.
There still is that pressure. My daughter's going to be 17 this summer, but when she was younger, she played softball like fairly competitively, meaning that they were like a win or so away from going to the Little League World Series when she was 12. And she only had one bad low while she was playing. And it was enough. She was at third base. The inning ended, and she gestured to me, came through the dugout, and said, "Something's wrong." Like, that's all she said. And she had a low that was in the 30s and 40s. It took a while to come back up again. But when her at bat rolled around, even at like back then, 10, 11, 12 years old, I think she felt pressured to go hit because she did not want anybody to think that this was going to stop her from doing that. And I'll never get into her head as to why, but I watched her go hit with a blood sugar that was maybe only 70 and had just started coming up, and she fought through it, but you could tell something was wrong with her. Yeah. I wish she was a little older when that happened so I could talk to her about it, but.
And the thing and that's a great point in that what's tough too is with diabetes is you get that low, and yes, you can recover, and your blood sugar's back up to 70 and going higher and going to get to 100, but you still don't feel right.
Right.
That the low blood sugar can throw off. And I've found that even exercising now that, a kind of a giveaway for me that my blood sugar is going down is my balance is off. Mm-hmm. I just don't have the same, I can just feel it physically. So it's, to your earlier question, yes, you can make it, you can play, but it does affect you.
I don't know if you'll want to answer this, but is there ever a time where you're running down the court thinking, I shouldn't be out here?
Yeah, there was times where I was like, I need a timeout.
Yeah. Somebody foul somebody. I just want to know that you fouled somebody one time to get a break. That's all.
Yeah. Well, and and the thing is, and again, everybody who has diabetes knows this, is what's so hard about it with playing is, or can be difficult, is that your body, you still have everything else that everybody else is going through, right? I mean, we play 82 games. There's times where you have a cold or you don't feel great or you didn't get a good night. And it's hard sometimes to differentiate. All right, I feel off. Is my blood sugar? So when I say I want a timeout, it's not always that something was bad. It's like I need to test to make sure, because I didn't have that confidence that I was that I was maybe going down. And sometimes you test and you're like, no, you're fine. Yeah. You just don't feel good.
Because people who don't have type 1, when they feel off, their next thought isn't, I wonder if I have too much insulin, I'm about to pass out in front of 35,000 people.
Exactly.
It's a good point. And now, would you mind if what were your A1Cs when you were playing? Do you have any idea?
They were sevens. I tried to get below 7, but and the A1C is great in a lot of ways, but and now we're talking about time and range, which I think is more important, because with the A1C, I would have good A1C sometimes, but I might have been, 50 plus 180 is what, I mean, it's like,
you can fool the test. You can fool the test by having a lot of lows and a lot of highs and seeing it balance out. I just know that was the only way that they paid attention to it back then. Your point is 100% right. Time and range, less variability. That really is a great measure of health. I was just wondering, but sevens that was probably better than what the ADA was asking for at that point.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I worked hard at it to try to keep it, to stay in range.
So when you're a professional athlete, there's an inference that your body is it operates differently than some people's. So do you have to, back then, were you eating like the guys now look like superheroes? You know what I mean? Like, you look like a tall man who was athletic when you played. Like, the guys now look like they could grab you and throw you if they wanted to. Did you eat more specifically, or was it more like, I don't know, was it like cheeseburgers and basketball? Like, what was the vibe?
That's a good question. That was always a struggle with the trainers, and trying to get, they kind of had to balance that out, where they would try to get good. It was kind of funny. They would try to get healthy food on when the planes, when you're traveling, or the team meals. And then they found if it was too healthy, kind of like with our kids, if it's too healthy, nobody's going to eat it, and kind of defeats the purpose. Right. So I was aware, but I don't think there was the emphasis that there is today on what you're eating.
Right. On a fine tuning of what's going on.
And it's kind of funny. I played with some guys who they literally could eat a hamburger before the game and go out and just kill it, and kind of laugh about country strong, and just
right.
There were guys who are just tremendous athletes. It catches up with you later, but they were I couldn't do what they did. But just, I think that's where diabetes actually is, that there are some blessings on diabetes, or some advantages, and one is you do get to know your body better. And I did go through the process of, all right, what does my body work better? What type of food does it work better with?
Yeah. It just occurred to me that over the last couple of decades, as we understand nutrition better, that it doesn't just happen overnight, that there is a transition of talking generations into believing differently. And I watched, my son's 21 now. He plays college baseball. And right up until about a year and a half ago, he had that, just here, I'll take a handful of this and that. And, you're running out on the field with a donut in your mouth almost, in between games. And now, as he's getting into 21 years old, he's like, I don't think I should be eating this. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so either. And he doesn't have type 1. My daughter does. But it's just very interesting to see that happen. And in my mind, you always, your head goes to ideas of, old baseball players playing, with hangovers and stuff like that, and being the best. All right. So I just have to ask you, Jordan, just so much better at the time than everyone else, or it still stacks up today?
It still stacks up today. To me, he's the best player ever.
Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is the first pre-mixed auto-injector of glucagon for very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Not only is Gvoke HypoPen simple to administer, but it's simple to learn more about. All you have to do is go to GvokeGlucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit GvokeGlucagon.com/risk. My daughter turned 17 years old yesterday. She got her driver's license. We gave her a cupcake. We went out to dinner. When she woke up this morning, she went to the beach with her brother and some friends. Just like most 17-year-olds, she slept in a little bit in the morning and got up with not quite enough time to eat before she went to the beach. She got in the car. They drove to the shore. They spent a few hours on the beach, and they came home. The the entire time, I could see Arden's blood sugar on my phone. Why is that? Well, it's because Arden's wearing the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. My wife and I could both see Arden's blood sugar on our iPhones, and if we had Android phones, we could see it there as well. Arden can share her numbers with up to 10 followers, and so can you. Dexcom.com/juicebox. At one point, I sent Arden a text that said just this: was that food? And what I was talking about was that I saw her blood sugar kind of go from 190 to 130. And she said no. And I said, hydrate and bolus. And she did. And that was that. Dexcom.com/juicebox. The speed and direction of the blood sugar. Available at your fingertips on your iPhone, your Android, or you can use the Dexcom receiver. So if you're the person with type 1 and you don't want to look at it on your phone, you could use the receiver. Or you can use your cell phone. The apps are terrific. And sharing with other people is amazing. Seeing your blood sugar and the speed it's moving in, that's life-changing. Please take a second. Get started today with the Dexcom. You will not be sorry. If you're using insulin, seeing your blood sugar in real time is about the best thing that could happen. It allows you to make these great decisions with insulin and with food. And you get to see if things are going right or wrong. So next time you can say to yourself, oh, you know what? Did a unit for that. Went up to 140, kind of sat there, corrected later with a unit. Maybe next time I'll use 2 units for that. I don't know, something like that. These are made up numbers, but you get what I'm saying, right? You see what happens, cause and effect, and you get to make better decisions next time. The links in the show notes of your podcast player will take you there. The links at juiceboxpodcast.com will take you there, but you can always just type it in. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Gvoke Glucagon.com/juicebox. And don't forget, he's not a sponsor, but he's doing such a great job on the show today. ChrisDudley.org. All right, let's get back to Chris and the story about Michael Jordan. Did you like how I let him answer the question? I didn't do a cliffhanger on you? Bet you weren't expecting that.
I was fortunate. When I was in college, I went down to work jobs at the basketball camps down at UNC where Jordan went, and he would play during the summer. So I got to play with him during the summer. Mm-hmm. And then obviously he's a couple years older than I am, but I played mostly during his time and had a lot of, when I was in Cleveland, we played the Bulls a couple times early in the playoffs. And what Jordan to me was and is the best player to play the game.
Yeah. My son tries to make the point that even the fifth guy on a bad team is incredibly athletic now. And I try to retell the best I can. I always go to the one story where I tell him I was watching a game one day and Michael Jordan turned his ankle completely over. Like his foot went underneath of his leg and it was bent sideways. And you thought for sure he'd never walk again. And he stood up and hobbled, and then ran. And I was like, yeah. I don't understand. Yeah. You know, did you ever see Reggie White's knee hyperextend? And then he leaves the field. It's an amazing video. His knee goes backwards the way it's supposed to go forwards. He leaves the field. If you're a Philadelphia fan, you think I'm never going to see Reggie White again. And 2 plays later, he's back out there playing. And I'm just like, I don't understand how that happens. Like some people just get amazing gifts, physical gifts like that. So you bring him back right now, 25 years old, drop him in the league. He's the best player in the league.
Best player in the league.
No kidding. Yeah. So how do you keep up with that when you're everyone else? What's the plan?
It's hard. And I think the game has changed, but it was there's some things that are better today. Probably they're definitely, the skill level has gone up as far as the outside. There's such a premium on outside shooting. Mm-hmm. That has definitely changed. But the game then was so much more physical. So the counter argument too is, could some of the guys today be as successful
back then
if they're getting, every time they go to the lane,
someone's punching them in the ribs.
They like to say that they're getting touched.
That's so funny. You said that.
It's just a different deal. And I do think the one, and we've kind of touched on it, one huge advantage you have today that would have played out for guys back then is the nutrition, the strength, the medical. They don't play the same. They take off back-to-backs. They rest more. It's just it was more of a grind, even more of a grind back, especially when I first came in the league, than it is today. It's a little bit, and part of it is the dollars that have gone into it that are in the league. I think there was an article about LeBron, and that he spends, I don't know, it was close to $1 million on something, on massage and nutritionists and cook and this and that, and for good reason. I mean, he's unbelievable. Yeah. He's a freak of nature, and he works at it. And so I think that's changed to an extent. It's helped guys.
I guess it's sort of the way people drive a show car. You only take it out on Sundays when it's sunny. You drive it a little slower. And you played in a time where they were like, listen, we're driving you every day until you fall apart. Then you can leave and someone else will come. But even the length of your career, was that even uncommon back then?
Yeah, no, it's, the average, I mean, some guys do it, but the average in the league is three years. So there's a lot of turnover. And if you get past 10, it was definitely uncommon. It'll be interesting today because guys come out earlier, so they start younger. When I played, there were some players that came direct or a couple years in, but even Michael Jordan was a junior when he came into the league, junior in college.
Right.
So they're younger. So it will be interesting to see if they can go as long or not.
Was there a club? Like, did you know Ron Santo and Bobby Clark? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, did you guys know each other? Or
those were my heroes, but I really didn't know them.
Okay.
And so I was well aware. I grew up I lived in Philly till I was 12, and so I was a big fan of the Broad Street Bullies, the Philadelphia Flyers, won back-to-back Stanley Cups in the 70s. So I was a huge Bobby Clark fan before I got diabetes. And so when I found out he had diabetes, that was huge for me and very inspirational.
So I grew up in Bucks County, right outside of the Northeast. And I have to tell you, when I found out Bobby Clark had type 1 diabetes, it was only like 10 years ago. And then you think back to how he played, and I don't even understand. That doesn't even make any sense, you know? But I guess it was a different time. I don't know. Sam Fold he's a GM of the Phillies now. But when he was on the podcast, he just told me when I was playing, if you saw me in the outfield chewing gum, I was low, or I thought I was low. And if I was chewing seeds, I thought I was okay. Like that was like the extent of what he would do. You know, it's really fascinating.
Well, I remember when I was a kid hearing that at the Flyers practice, they'd always have orange juice and like a chocolate bar over on the bench.
And that was for him.
And yeah.
That's crazy. It really is. Okay. So how do people find out about the foundation, and what do you want from them? You want them to learn about it? You want them to donate to it? You want them to come out to an event? What is it you're trying to do, and how are you handling this with COVID?
Well, so chrisdudley.org, you look up the foundation, and obviously we're nonprofit and would always accept donations because we're putting on camp every year. Last year would have been the 25th. This would be the 26th. Last year we held camp, but it was virtual. Yeah. And unfortunately this year, we're back doing the same. It's either virtual, or we may try to do a couple. I may go to different spots and meet with kids, a few different places. We're looking into doing that, but we just couldn't hold camp this year because of the COVID, because of the restrictions.
Yeah.
that are in place now, and it just really breaks our heart that we can't.
Is the camp normally indoors or outdoors?
Outdoors. So it's back east you got the Poconos,
right? Sure.
So the camp's up there. This is kind of that kind of setting,
okay.
And it's an outdoor with bunkhouses, outdoor courts, swimming pool, rolling hills, and volleyball court, and so it's a great outdoor bunkhouse kind of which kind of envision camp.
Right. That's amazing. I have more questions if you have time.
Yeah, I do.
Cool. So do you have any other autoimmune issues? Thyroid, celiac,
yes,
anything like that?
I've been on a thyroid. I take a thyroid, I'm blanking on the name right now, but I take a thyroid pill every morning.
Synthroid?
And it's been Synthroid. Thank you.
No problem.
Yep.
How long, when were you diagnosed with that? And is it Hashimoto's or is it hypothyroidism? Do you know? Is it autoimmune or is it not?
I think it's hypo. I think it's the latter. And I think it's, I've been on, probably 15 years, I think, maybe more than that. I just know I've been taking this for forever. And it's been with just taking the one pill every morning. It's been good.
So after you got done playing, this happened?
That's a great question. I think it was right after I got done playing.
I see. Yeah. And do you remember, were you lethargic, hair falling out? Like, do you remember what led you to it or just the blood test caught it?
It was just the blood test where they just said you're a little, either a little high or a little low, whatever it was. And we recommend this pill.
No kidding.
So that's what I have. Other than that, no. We have a number of kids at camp who have celiac and different thing. We have some diet things that we do at camp for kids.
Yeah, there's definitely an increased occurrence of things like that. Even low vitamin D seems to be really common with people with type 1. It's interesting that I like to ask people, how about in your family line? Any other type 1 in your line?
Yeah, my uncle. So my father's brother had diabetes. He's passed away now, but he had diabetes from a young kid on. So my father, when I had this, and I had the classic symptoms, being incredibly thirsty and then having to go to the bathroom. And he caught it earlier than probably normally would have because of my uncle. And I went to the drugstore, got I think it was called test tape back then. And
you peed on it, right?
Yep.
It's a different world. Now you got a thing on you that's telling your cell phone what your blood sugar is.
I know. It's such a different world.
Yeah. It really is something because you lived through and had diabetes through a couple of leaps. You went from one insulin to another kind of insulin. You went from one testing to another kind. And now this, would you, if they told you that they could implant cells in you that would start making insulin again and give you a medication that would stop your body from killing the cells, you would do it? Or would you not? That's
a good question. What are the side effects?
Yeah, right. Well, that's the obvious first question, but I don't know. I'm just, my bigger question is somebody who's lived for this many decades with type 1, are you looking to get rid of it or do you not think about it like that anymore?
I'd love for there to be a cure. And I have to say, I'd love there to be a cure, not so much for me, but for the kids and for others. Cause I've learned to live with it. And so but yeah, I mean, when technology is great when it works,
right?
When you get you're in a meeting and a pump goes bad, or I don't know what device you're on, but if you've gone through the doorway and you've caught your pod on your, wherever, or you're on a plane and all of a sudden it's like bad pod, all that stuff that I think the toughest part is just the 24/7 of it, that you just don't get a break from it. So yeah, I'd like to be, I certainly would want there to be a cure, but again, I would rather, kind of I don't think the kids at my camp, I don't know that they're going to live through their whole life with having diabetes.
Like this.
I think we're getting closer and closer.
It's amazing. I had, there was a gentleman on a couple months ago, and there's this drug that right now, when you get diagnosed, if they catch you early enough, they put you on this drug and it can hold off the onset for like years. It's fascinating, you know?
In fact, I'm involved with a company here up in Oregon that's working on, we have tests, a screen that will show, are you at risk of are you going to get type 1?
Type 1, yeah.
And if you, and before it used to be, and they've been trying to do the screen, and this is a much quicker, easier test than what's now, where you got to do it, send it back to the lab and wait a couple of weeks or whatever to get the results. Before it was, and I talked with my wife about this, you didn't necessarily want to give the test to your kids when they were young because they were going to get, take blood and all that. But because there was nothing you could do about it. Mm-hmm. Now you can do something about it. Yep. So that's very, very exciting that you can.
Are you talking about TrialNet?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Sure. They were on recently too. There's a lot of people.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So TrialNet, and it's a much bigger, their pitch for people to get tested is completely different now than it was even just a couple years ago, right. Because now you have something that you can actually, and there was thoughts that you could do certain things, give a little insulin, do certain things to kind of prevent it before. But now we know concretely that you can postpone it, which is awesome news.
It's amazing technology. It's some of this newer stuff is the closest stuff I've seen. That seems like it uses science that we understand now, and that it feels like it has like an end point. It's not just like we're going to try this and see where we get to. It's really cool.
But with that, I think it's. I think we're getting so much closer and closer and closer. But you also don't want to be. You still got to deal with the diabetes, and you don't want to give newly diagnosed
people the feeling that they don't have to take care of themselves because it's going to go away. Yeah, I tell my daughter, look, I live with the hope that somebody will figure this out, but I don't expect it. I guess that's the difference. Like, I hope, but I don't expect. My daughter's A1C has been in the mid 5s for 7 years now. She doesn't have any dietary restrictions. Like this podcast, what we usually talk about is how to use insulin in ways that keep you, from spiking and having problems like that. But
that's great.
Yeah, it's very cool. But at the same time, I like knowing that people are out there working on this stuff. It's interesting.
No, I do too. And I just throw that caveat, not to be negative, but it's, I remember parents telling me, and this is 20 years ago, or even when I was diagnosed, it was like, well, there's probably going to be a cure in 5 or 10 years. Mm-hmm. And that was
that's what they said. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I think we're getting, and whether there's going to be the magic pill kind of cure with no side effects. And I don't know or it's just going to be the technology just gets better. And we're on the closed loop system or whatever it might be. Yeah. It's just getting so much better.
My daughter's using an algorithm, and I have to tell you that we were really good at it prior. And there's things to learn when you're using an algorithm, adjustments you have to make, but I have not slept so well as I have since she's been on that. To see the algorithm take away basal to stop like a drifting low blood sugar is amazing. And it just, unless you really mess up overnight, she doesn't get low overnight. And
do you mind me asking what are you guys using? Do you use Riley Link or anything like that?
So she's looping right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So she loops with an Omnipod, a Dexcom, and we actually use the Orange Link. It's a new link that came out that seems more stable for us. But I'm excited to try Omnipod 5 because it eliminates the link and it eliminates the need for me to understand how to build an app and keep it on her phone and things like that. And she's going to be heading off to college soon, so I would like it to be more retail, I guess. And Omnipod's
how is Orange different than
the Riley?
Yeah,
I don't honestly know. Her Riley link was busting up because she drops it all the time. And
me too.
and I went to buy a new one, and I bought the orange one to try it. And I'll just tell you that I just told somebody this in the podcast the other day, but I am in a 2-story house, and Arden was in the dining room with my wife at the end of the night. She went upstairs with her phone, but forgot the Orange Link behind. but her bedroom is above the dining room, and we never knew. It kept the algorithm running the whole time. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's really cool. I mean, and just that somebody made that there's a guy somewhere who's like, I'll do this, it's really fascinating. But I am excited to get the Omnipod 5 and give it a whirl and see how it goes. But yeah, I think algorithms are the future, and I hope everybody who wants one can get one financially.
Yes.
It's really something. Your kids, did you ever test your kids?
Yes. And they've, no diabetes, obviously, and not at risk.
No kidding. And I guess my last question for you is, because I'm assuming you've been married for a while, is your wife at all, you're smiling like, yes, I have been. Is your wife at all involved in your diabetes, or would you, and to what level? How does that work for you guys?
Well, early on, I mean, she was awesome, and she really dove into kind of understanding it and, what diabetes was, and really helping me with diet and diving into that control and making sure I had snack, a big deal. Obviously, and especially before we've been able to get kind of the tighter control with all the technology we're talking about, but a big deal. And even today is worrying about low blood sugars when you're driving or different things, and really making sure she always made sure I was prepared. It really helped me with my diabetes, and not letting me just not forget about it or ignore it. It's like, because we all go through that emotional, or I think we all go through it. I know our campers do, but at times where you just want to I just don't want to deal with this. But no, she's been awesome.
That's cool.
Absolutely awesome.
It's funny, right? About an hour before you and I did this, my daughter's going to school virtually from our house, and I got a notification. So my Dexcom is set at 70 and 120. So I got this notification she was going over 120, which we don't usually see. And I walked in and I was like, what's going on? And she goes, oh, my pod ran out of insulin. I forgot to tell you. And it was just like a half an hour ago. So she starts drifting up. And that was the thing you were talking about before. I think, like, even when you're good at it and you've been doing it forever, you almost forget the technology, which is a blessing. But at the same time, you see more newly diagnosed people are like, well, I changed my pump at this time so that it's ready to be changed again at this. Like, you don't do that after a while,
No.
So she just shut her camera off and stood up, and we swapped her pod real quick, and she sat back down and she was on her way again. But it's a really different world. I don't think that my daughter will ever appreciate how you grew up with diabetes. I don't think she'll have any frame of reference for it.
No. I think Ron, you brought up the name Ron Santos before. Right. It's amazing to me that he played at a time before test kits.
Yeah.
It's like, how did you do that? That's just incredible. And, he somewhere, I didn't hear him tell, but I've heard the story told of him going up to bat and having double vision. And, he tells the story of course, he had to guess which ball to hit, and he hit the right one and hit a home run or whatever. But the fact that what they dealt with at people before, even before myself, is amazing. And what he went through is incredibly difficult. And even Bobby Clark was much more difficult. And then what I went through was difficult. But it's gotten better and better and better and better. It's just easier.
Yeah. Baseball does fascinate me too, because it is such a schedule. And when they're not playing, they're traveling. And you hear guys like, I don't know how far my son's ever going to go, but he knows guys that play, and some of them stop playing because of just like the mental fatigue of it. Like, they just can't keep up in their heads anymore. He had a friend that was in the White Sox organization, and the guy said, first of all, I got there and we were all like the exact same athlete. He says, which is really a bummer because you're not better than anybody all of a sudden, Right. And he goes, and then it's just every day, and then on a bus. And he's like, it was just hard to keep up, But then, like you were saying earlier, then put type 1 diabetes on top of that. It's a hell of an accomplishment. It really is. Especially, I don't imagine that they see you as, I don't know, but do you really get seen as a person, or are you like a thing that the team owns that they want to work? You know what I mean? Like, are you a tool, or are you a person? And how much of that is your problem and how much of it is theirs? Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's, I do remember once early in my career, played for, I was in New Jersey, and Bill Fitch was the coach. In training camp, I was struggling with my control. And I mean, there were times in training camp where I would go with 2-a-days, you're just going so hard, where I almost didn't take insulin. And you're just because of how hard, what your body's going through.
Right.
And it was a different deal. They don't do that the same way anymore.
Sure.
But it was brutal. But I remember I was kind of, maybe I had to sit out and was just having a hard time with it. And he just kind of pulled me aside and said, hey, we pay you a lot of money. You're and he was a great guy, and he
right.
cared for me. But he said, you're professional. We pay you a lot of money. Get it under control.
Yeah, figure it out. Right.
And it was a little bit of tough love. And it was, I was like, okay.
How old do you think you were then?
And it did. I was in Jersey. I was probably 25.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I guess, I mean, honestly, do you grow up, this has got nothing to do with diabetes, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but do you emotionally grow up slower when this is your life? Like when you're doing something like this, it's on a national stage, you're good at it, you're making money. Is there not the need to be mature through your 20s?
No. I mean, I would say, and that's one of the reasons sometimes guys last and they don't last. The guys, you kind of, you find out quickly. It's a job. It's a profession. I mean, it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm playing with the best talent in the world, playing on TV. It's incredible, but it's a job. And the ones you see, and that's why teams always want to have a few veterans around. They want the veterans kind of mentor the guys, because the veterans are the ones take it serious. They're the ones putting in the time. The most successful players, it's usually not that hard. Obviously, they're incredibly physically gifted, but they're also the ones that put in incredible amounts of time and really treat it as a profession.
Right.
So to answer your question, yeah, there are some that are immature, especially when they first come in the league and kind of falling, have money in their pocket and the attention and all that. But the ones that last are usually
turn it into a job. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I treat this podcast like a job. I have to be honest. And if I didn't, I mean, these things would seemingly have nothing to do with each other. But if I didn't treat this like a job, it wouldn't exist the way it does. It would fall apart.
Right.
It just wouldn't be able to hold on. It's crazy. Is there anything I didn't bring up that you were hoping to talk about?
No, I just think with our foundation, maybe what I'd like to touch on with the foundation, and you asked earlier, and we'd love for people, to go on our website at chrisdudley.org, and with the camp. And the thing I found is that that the initial thought behind camp was that it'd be awesome to teach kids how to play basketball while having type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. And that is awesome and something we do. And we teach them about their diabetes, and we teach them about it's basketball camp. So it's a 2-in-1. It's right. A regular basketball camp that's wrapped into with diabetes. But some of the real value of camp has been getting to know others who are walking in the same shoes, and just how important that is. When I grew up, when I got diagnosed at 16, sophomore in high school, I really don't think I knew anybody with diabetes or I didn't have any friends with diabetes for years. I didn't in high school or college. And it can be kind of lonely. I mean, you have friends, but there's certain things you just can't, it's just not the same. And I think that connection that happens there at camp when other kids, now our campers, they stay in touch all year long, and they, through social media, whatever. Right. But I think that's invaluable, because so often we have at camp, we have on a Thursday night, we have this thing called Pass the Ball, where you go up front and you kind of talk about something, and you hold the ball and pass it to the next person that comes up. But some of the stories people tell you, it breaks your heart. Mm-hmm. Of just how alone they are, how they're ostracized for having diabetes or whatever it may be. And you kind of, teen years are tough without diabetes, but they can be very tough with diabetes. Yeah. And so I think that's something for us all to just kind of keep in mind. And that's why I love that you're doing this podcast, and I love that you're kind of having that stretching the diabetes community, because I love talking about it. I mean, it's helpful to kind of pick your brain, you pick, whatever. I think it's so important. So I would say, thank you for what you're doing, and that's what we're doing with our camp as well.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're doing it, and I'll tell you that when I started this, I really just thought that I was a person who wrote about diabetes, and people would tell me that when they read the stuff, they had, better control, for the lack of a better way of saying it real quickly. And when I made the podcast, I thought that's what the podcast was going to be about. I just thought it was going to be about talking about how to use insulin, how to have better outcomes. But I meet people and interview people who love the show, who already understand how to manage their insulin, and never needed the show for that. They needed it to hear another person with diabetes tell a story, or to realize there were other people like them, which is such a trite thing to say, but it is incredibly true. Like, you need to have a community. And if you can't find it in person, finding it, like this is apparently pretty valuable. And I did not expect that. So it's very cool to be able to bring people together. And I'll tell you, I do topics that I don't think most people talk about. There's a woman on here 2 weeks ago who's got bipolar disorder and diabetes. There's a girl on here trying to shake heroin addiction and type 1. Like you said, there's other things that go, like there's real people life, and then you get diabetes on top of it. So we have people on all the time talking about difficult stuff, and it would be your inclination to think, well, don't have a girl on who's done heroin. Like, people won't like that, but that's not the truth. The truth is that there's a lot of people living a lot of lives, and a lot of them have type 1 diabetes too. So it's very good. That's why I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with me. And I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank
Excellent. No, great. Hey, Kelsey, can you jump back on for a second?
Hello.
Hey, Kelsey, I'm still recording because you're a fan of the show. You get to talk for a second so you can hear yourself one day when you're listening to this.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
That was pretty much it. Do you have type 1 as well?
I do. Yeah. I've had type 1 since I was 7 years old.
Right. And you work with Chris through the foundation?
Yes. Yeah. I work full time for the Chris Dudley Foundation and help out with camp every summer. And we're looking forward to when we can get back in person.
That's very cool. I just wanted to record your voice.
Kelsey's got a great story. So Kelsey was a camper. Kelsey, what age did you come at?
10.
First 10. So long time, life for a camper. And then Kelsey met her husband, who also has type 1, at camp.
Kelsey, you met your husband at Chris's camp?
I did. Yeah. He came as a basketball coach, and I was working there, and we got married last May.
Chris, did that mean you had to pay for the wedding? I don't understand.
Well, if I did, I got off because it was
a nice wedding.
It was a very COVID wedding.
Very COVID wedding.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, so you just got, how old are you now, Kelsey?
I am 20. I will be 29 in about a week.
Wow. Good for you. Are you thinking of having little children?
Yep. Someday.
Did you align with what Chris was saying earlier about some people don't want to know and some people want to know? Do you think you would test your kids?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something I kind of go back and forth on, because like you guys were saying, nowadays there's the technology so that if you do know, there's stuff you can do about it.
Right.
I think when I was younger and I would hear people talk about it, I'd be like, well, why would you do that? Then they just have to sit there and wait for it to happen.
Yeah.
But now there's so much technology that I think it would be interesting to see, especially with both parents having type 1.
Well, Kelsey, I think, and you might have heard them already, but the pro tip series might help when you decide to be pregnant one day. And I don't know if you heard I had Samantha on. So Chris, this girl came on with type 1 who I interviewed her in her first, second, third trimester. And then I interviewed her postpartum as well. And just so she could talk about what it was like to be pregnant with type 1. And I hear from a lot of women that it's helpful. So I'm not rushing you, Kelsey, but you are 29, so let's get to it. Okay?
No, that's awesome. I have friends as well that I think would really enjoy that.
That's very cool. Well, I appreciate you. I know Kelsey reached out, and Chris, she found me for you. So I'm really grateful for her, and I just wanted to say hi to her. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
All right. Take care.
Well, I'd like to thank Chris from the Chris Dudley Foundation, chrisdudley.org. I want to thank Dexcom for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Also, a huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. Hey, this is going to be like months from now, but I also recorded with Kelsey from the end of the episode. She was really great. I don't know when you're going to hear that, but I enjoyed talking to her very much, in fact, and I think you'll enjoy hearing from her. Anyway, if you're looking for a great basketball camp and you're out in the greater Northwest, definitely check out chrisdudley.org to learn more about the Chris Dudley Foundation. And I'm leaving all that check out stuff in there because I got to be honest with you, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I get on a roll and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I got all that out without messing up. And sometimes I say check out instead of check out, or check out instead of check out, or whatever. I'm a little tired. It's late at night here. I'll talk to you guys soon. I really appreciate you listening, sharing the show. Last week, the show hit 1 million downloads just for 2021. So in 2021, we were at 1 million already. That was crazy. The show in total should hit 4 million any time now. I don't know if I've got a celebration planned around that or not. I'm not really sure what I could do, but I can tell you this, it's because of you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for telling your doctors. Doctors, thank you for telling your patients. I can't thank all of you enough. This show would not grow without the fervent support of the listeners. And I know that. I wish I could say thank you 1,000 times. I'll talk to you soon.